Senior correspondent John Miller, former FBI assistant director, joins us now. So what do you make of this?
Well, this harkens back to the Alexander Litvinenko case in London. This is the former KGB spy who was also poisoned with polonium-210. The interesting thing about that was that happened in 2006. This was in 2004. That was something that was dropped into his tea by somebody he met in a hotel that you and I have been to in Grosvenor Square. But that also suggests, if you look at the Arafat case, the amount of proximity you would have to do this. In other words, there weren't half a dozen PLO leaders or family members who got sick when somebody poisoned a meal. If in fact this turns out to be a poisoning, that means it had to be somebody one-on-one who could put this into his food or drink in a lethal amount.
I know you did well in chemistry, so I'm going to ask you this question about polonium-210, which was what was used in the Litvinenko and then is suspected with Yasser Arafat. His body has been interred for 8 years. What's the likelihood that they're going to find traces of that?
Well, I spoke to Vahid Majidi, the former top weapons of mass destruction man for the FBI, the guy who worked with Scotland Yard on the Litvinenko case, and he said polonium-210 has a shelf life or a half-life of 138 days, which means if you have a pound of it in 138 days, you'll have a half a pound of it. So if you do the math, he's been interred since 2004. This would be a highly concentrated but very small amount. So I think what they're probably not going to find is evidence of polonium. What they could find is a daughter product like lead-206, which it would leave behind. But that's not so unique that it couldn't have come from something else.
But the Israelis are suspected of doing that if, in fact, it happened. Is there any evidence they have used this kind of thing before?
Yes and no. There is the case of Khalid Mashal, who in September of 1997 was on a street in Jordan when 2 Israeli agents came up and shot a fast-acting liquid poison into his ear. They were caught by a plainclothes cop and his bodyguard, and it was a huge embarrassment for the Mossad. But the Israelis had to turn over to the Jordanians the anecdote to save him.
Forced them to do it.
Yes, that's right.
This couldn't happen at a worse time. I mean, just as the ceasefire has gone into effect, right?
Well, it certainly is a complicating time. Yeah. But, you know, the Middle East and that intersection in particular is a place that thrives on conspiracy theories. And this will be a hard one to prove if, in fact, it happened at all. It'll be a harder one to attribute if it did happen, to prove not just that it was poisoning, but who was behind it. But I will tell you this from having been in the region, as you all have been. People are going to believe what they believe after this is over, and it'll be the same thing they were thinking before.
Does the intelligence community have an opinion, yes or no?
I don't know, Charlie. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah.